I'm in a good mood. I'm in a really good mood. I think last week, Fanny After Dark, I was able to let out, like, I was really nervous about recording that video because when you put yourself out there and you say what's on your mind and how you're feeling, like, rarely does it always line up with what everybody else is feeling. I think that's the biggest thing right now with a lot of content creators being kind of out of touch. And you see that comment a lot, being off base, being out of touch. I do still have some things that I want to say and get off my chest, and we'll talk about that probably in Friday's video. But I feel really good right now. I think that while Pokemon still has a lot going on, I think that this big surge that we've had in either people returning to the hobby or kind of experiencing the hobby for the first time for a very long time, I think there's a lot of like understanding, which during the pandemic when we had this giant boom, for the first, I don't know, like 6, 7, 8 months, it seemed like there was just a lot of uncertainty. Everybody was going all over the place, scrambling, running around like a chicken with their head cut off. It was crazy, and you didn't know where to go. And I think we've kind of seen that over the last few months, but I think people are starting to figure it out, which is really, really cool. And I think that's going to ultimately help as we continue into this boom that we're talking about. I do think it's going to continue. It's very interesting looking at what's happening in Pokemon. I don't know if you guys have looked at the leaks. They're not really leaks yet of the Team Rocket set. I don't even know if we can really call it the Team Rocket set, right? Like, there was all of this assumption. And I think Pokemon kind of debated us. Like, if we go back to the World Championships in Honolulu in August, they put up the Rocket symbol, which I think a lot of people just kind of took, hey, we're getting a Team Rocket set. Then we got the announcement of Glory to Team Rocket coming out in Japan, and then all of a sudden we kind of put pieces together, and we're like, well, this comes out on the 25th anniversary of the Team Rocket set, and then you start getting some leaks, and it's like, is this not a Team Rocket set? Is this more of like just a play on of the trainer Pokemon, but it's going to also include Rocket Pokemon, so we're not looking at Dark Pokemon? And I think that's confusing a lot of people. We had all of these buyouts and all this hype, and that's another thing we'll talk about on Friday, but really kind of putting everything all together, making sure we don't FOMO or anything like that. Like all of these eyeballs on Team Rocket, and people trying to take advantage of things, right? Like buying out all the Team Rocket cards. We talked about that last week, the Rocket Effect, or a couple weeks ago, where all of these Team Rocket cards, all these Giovanni cards, all these Persian cards, Rockets, Dark, all these Pokemon cards really started exploding in price because of, I mean, you can call it manipulation if you want, like it was just hype, unwarranted hype, because we didn't know what was going to happen. Really, what it was is FOMO. Like, that's what it all boils down to, this fear of missing out. Like, they wanted to buy these cards now in case the Team Rocket set is Dark Pokemon and does focus on all these Team Rocket attributes. Buy it now before it explodes in price. And I think that's what's happening with some Mega Pokemon cards. Like, there's these thought process about Megas returning maybe at the end of the year, and that's still kind of up in the air. We've had teasers and spoilers about the potential of Megas returning, but nothing that's been confirmed. And we do have Pokemon Day coming up, and maybe we'll get some more information on that. We do have teasers and spoilers about Black and White making a return, maybe in our summer set, but there's all right now, it's just all kind of speculation, and I think that's causing a lot of people to FOMO and freak out, and that's leading towards all of this uncertainty and all this rash decision making and things like that. But I feel really good. I feel like Pokemon is going to start, things are going to start getting better. I'm waiting for some more answers before I start kind of throwing out more. I really like to have factual information. I really want to find out more about Pokemon reprints and what's going on with that kind of information, so I can hopefully deliver that to you. But I think right now, from a content creator standpoint, it's very dangerous. And I don't really call myself a content creator, because this is really just conversation. Like, I don't think I necessarily know anything that you don't know. I just have like distributor access. I've been into the hobby for a while, and I just like to talk about Pokemon, and I feel like having a conversation and sharing opinions and thought processes back and forth is really important, and I value what you guys have to say. And that's why this whole idea of like this movement or this culture or this state of mind, like not paying above MSRP, staying together for like the importance of the hobby, what brought you into the hobby, is so important. So I hope you do appreciate the content. If you do, please hit that subscribe button down below. Leave a like, leave a comment. It goes a really long way for the algorithm, but ultimately I think that's what leads to a lot of content creators kind of being out of touch, and I'm super guilty of it as well, because I have been in the hobby for a long time, and I think it's really important to value everybody's opinions and understand that they're going to be different, and everybody's going to be into Pokemon at different segments of their life, different segments of their career. Everything's different, and I think that's super important to respect, but we'll talk more about that later on. I do want to talk about Mega Pokemon, because Mega Pokemon were a big part of the competitive Pokemon trading card game, as well as just the hobby in general. When they originally came out, It was a lot of fun at the beginning of the XY generation. Obviously, you had sets like Phantom Forces, you had sets like Furious Fist. Furious Fist was really exciting because that was the introduction of Megas in a secret rare form. So you had like the Mega Heracross, you had the Mega Lucario, and it was just regular arts. They didn't have full arts at the time, but they had the gold borders, which symbolized that they were secret rare variants of those cards. And then they also had the regular art variants of them as well. And then as we evolved throughout the X and Y generation, then you started having full art Megas. They kind of got rid of those secret rare Megas, but it was all very, very fun and a lot of fun for the competitive side of things too. You had to attach a Spirit Link in order to Mega Evolve. If you didn't do that, you couldn't attack that turn. Your turn ended. So there was always all these little micro decisions that were going along with competitive play, which was very, very entertaining. However, Pokemon wasn't big enough where Mega Pokemon really blew up as far as like from a Pokemon card market standpoint goes. Like they were all relatively inexpensive, and we talk about the ebbs and flows of Pokemon, and this is like nothing that we've ever experienced before because the pandemic, and then now these are times where you really see just giant increases as far as prices go across the board, really hitting home with just about every single rarity in some capacity. Whereas before, when we had ebbs and flows, there might be some booster boxes that would go out of stock, or some elite trainer boxes that would go out of stock, or something like that, a specific card that was targeted that would do really well in competitive play. But you didn't have the swings like what you have now, so it's completely different. But I think, as I'm going to flip you guys around so you can see exactly what I'm talking about, we're starting to see this shift where a lot of people are FOMOing and a lot of people are making rash decisions because they're worried about what will happen later. So the return of Megas is definitely a possibility, but it's nothing that's been confirmed. And I think a lot of people making those decisions on buying those Team Rocket cards in advance, now seeing what the leaks and spoilers look like for Team Rocket. And I don't want to ruin anything for anybody, so I'm not going to discuss too much about them. You can go to pokebeach.com and you can read about all the spoilers for Team Rocket for the new set that's coming out in May on your own if you so choose. But the idea, the thought process of Megas returning to the TCG and seeing this in competitive play and also like how it's going to impact the Pokemon card market, I think has a lot of people making rash decisions. So we have seen a giant increase pretty much across the board. We're only going to go through 15 of them, but some of them have really, really increased as far as price points go. And now these probably were not printed anywhere near the sheer amount that we have seen from a lot of like Sword and Shield era cards and Scarlet and Violet era cards, because we have seen Pokemon increase their print numbers year after year, and Pokemon just wasn't as popular during the X and Y generation. It was definitely growing in popularity compared to where it was in Black and White, but it was nowhere near as popular as what it is now. You didn't really have to worry about reprints of sets because sets would stay available at the Pokemon warehouse and at distribution long enough throughout their time frame in competitive play before they would rotate. So there was always opportunity to buy sealed product, buy booster boxes as a storefront, because sets like Phantom Forces, sets like Furious Fists, booster boxes of those would stay in stock at distribution pretty much for the length that those cards would be legal for play. So we didn't really have to worry about reprints or restocks because it was always available. It was just always there. But when we start getting the market that we're experiencing now, and the idea of the potential of Megas returning, there was not as much concern about grading. There was not as much concern about protecting cards or even things like that. During the X and Y era, you definitely had more of a influx of collectors who valued persevering or preserving their cards for the long haul, but not like what you do now, where you're seeing like these astronomical grading numbers and population reports that we're experiencing today. So a little bit more difficult to find in like near mint condition. And a lot of people who were playing around the time and collecting around the time probably aren't involved as much as they were then. So maybe their binders are just kind of sitting in the attic or in the basement and they're just not really paying attention. And if you're not involved in the Pokemon card market, and if you're not involved in Pokemon in general, there's a good chance you probably just don't really know what's going on. You might see a line of people waiting outside of GameStop or Walmart or something like that to catch a restock. But for the most part, a lot of people just don't really know what's going on in the Pokemon market. So if they're not really in touch with it, then they're probably just not paying attention, and they have these cards and don't really even realize it. And that's just kind of the case with a lot of collectibles, right? So this is Mega Gengar right here. This is just the regular art variant. Like I said, there is a secret rare variant of this that has the gold borders around it, but we're just looking at the regular art variant. You can see right now sitting at $62.34. So that's a year high at least. I'm pretty sure it's an all-time high, but if you look at where it was in May, it was sitting at $32.06. So it's almost doubled in price over the last, 9 months? And consistency in sales has stayed pretty normal. It's actually gone down a little bit, so the availability just isn't there. But because of this idea idea of maybe Megas returning. People are starting to look at it, and they're not putting as many cards up, so the supply isn't there as much, but the demand is still there, causing this price point to start climbing and establish new year highs, and people are still buying it at that price point. So you're looking at $62.34 currently, which is about a 91% gain over where it was a year ago. If you look at cards like Mega Sceptile, this one does have a little bit of a pattern of kind of like a little bit more sales on a weekly basis. We talk about buyout, and we talk about FOMO and things like that, manipulation. I don't know if I would necessarily point to that. Maybe just an excessive amount that sold on a day where somebody was adding, 4 or 8 of them to their cart instead, because it's still only selling 8, 10, 12 on a weekly basis. It's not like it's jumped up to 40 available. There's just not as many available that are turning. So if you look in February of 2024, this was sitting at $5.70. Started sloping downward a little bit until November. It was hovering right around $9 then, and now it's up about 163% on the year, sitting at $15 and a penny and continuing to climb. So if you do have Mega Pokemon, or if you are out looking or things like that, some of these are still relatively inexpensive. Like $15 isn't necessarily expensive, but it's not necessarily cheap either, but definitely climbing up. This one from the Ancient Origins set. Here's the Mega Latios EX. This was basically a bulk card for a very long time. You can see in February of 2024, it was only sitting at $4.84. This is from Roaring Skies. Started going up a little bit. For the most part, it was relatively flat the majority of 2024. In November, it did creep up to about $8 and then took the next step forward. You can see a lot of these starting to really trend upward. The steep graph really starting to hit home right now. So it's up about 152.5%, sitting at $12.22 and continuing to climb. Here's the Mega Gyarados right here from Breakpoint. This one was trending down a little bit, and we talked about Megas probably about 6 months ago as this being a possibility. But in May 2024, it was starting to trend downward. In November of 2024, it was right around $17, $18, so just above its 1-year low. And then you really start seeing it move up. So not necessarily a buyout or anything like that going on, because you can see it's less sales, just the same amount of sales happening without a replenishment of that supply, because not as many people are moving them on the secondary market. So because of that, it's jumped up about 103%, sitting at $33.82 right now and continuing to trend upward. Here's the Mega Absol EX. This is a promo card. I remember when this was released, these promo boxes that got released, and I remember GameStop having this blowout sale. I've talked about that before on this channel because Pokemon cards just weren't moving, and GameStop was heavily invested in Pokemon cards. It was very interesting. But in February of 2024, all the way up until November of 2024, very flat, hovering between $6 and $8 right there. And then, like what we've seen from some of these other ones, as more and more people started getting involved in Pokemon, you can see consistency and sales start happening a little bit more regularly. And then this card just kind of exploded after that. So up about 119.5%, sitting at $15.10 right now and continuing to climb. Here's the Mega Rayquaza EX from Roaring Skies. This is the regular art variant. There's another variant in this set. This is the Dragon type right here. The other type is colorless. The other type was the type that did really well competitively. This one had a decent run at the beginning of its competitive play, but kind of died off a little bit. However, for the longest time, this was the more expensive of the two, because a lot of times people would buy them and then flip them on Amazon. They sold a lot better on Amazon for some reason than they did on other areas of the market. You can see in May of 2024, this is basically a $30, $31 card. That's right around its 1-year low, and now it's jumped up about 54% over the last 7-8 months. So it's sitting at $48.07 right now and continuing to climb. The colorless Rayquaza has passed it up quite a bit, which is very interesting. Here's the Mega Gallade EX. This one also from Roaring Skies. This one's jumped up almost 143%. So relatively slow growth from May of 2024 all the way up until December of 2024. And then just that replenishment of supply on the secondary market, not there. So even though it's establishing this consistent mark of sales every week throughout the entire year, really, we haven't seen that many blips or anything like that that shows this large amount of sales that have happened. There just hasn't been the supply to replace it. And because of that, because of the interest that's still there, they're just willing to pay a higher price point to have this card. And because of that, it's jumped up to $10.93 for a market price. Again, about 143% growth. I wanted to highlight some full arts as well. So here's the Mega Sceptile EX full art. This one has continued to climb very organically, very naturally. And you can see that based off of the consistent sales that it's had on a weekly basis. In February of 2024, it was sitting at $24.95. Now it's at $51.29. So just pretty much growing the entire year. You don't see any dips or anything like that. A little bit more of a steep growth pattern over the past month, up about 105.5% over the past year. Here's the Mega Mewtwo EX from Breakthrough. There were two different variants of this one. This one, Vanishing Strike one, and then there was another one as well. The other one a little bit more competitive, but this is the Vanishing Strike one right here. In February of 2024, it was sitting at $28.98. Again, slower growth up until November, and then really started taking off despite the fact that it stayed consistent in sales. Now it's up about 60.5%, so it's sitting at $48.26 and continuing to climb. Here's the Mega Aggron right here from Primal Clash. Beautiful looking card. I really love the artwork on this one. Not really competitive, but definitely a very cool looking Mega card. In February of 2024, it was sitting at $19.14, and again consistent growth throughout the majority of the year, and then you see it start shooting up a little bit more steeply starting in December. So it's up about 41%. Not a lot of sales that happen on a weekly basis, but more sales happening at higher price points, which is driving these price points up higher and higher as there's more hype in Pokemon. So we haven't seen as big of growth patterns on some of these, but still these new patterns, these new price points being accepted by the market. And now because of that, this one's up to $27.06 and continuing to grow. Here is that other Mega Mewtwo that we were talking about before with Psychic Infinity. Definitely a stronger attack, very consistent growth again, but a little bit more sharp growth over the past month. In February of 2024, it was sitting at $21.80. Now it's almost doubled in price, so it's sitting at $42.95, up about 97% and continuing to climb. A lot of the Evolutions cards doing extremely well, despite the fact that Evolutions is a very pricey set to open. In February of 2024, this was sitting at $15.02. It did start climbing in May when we saw a lot of those buyouts happen, and then came back down to earth a little bit to about $16, $17 until November, and then it started shooting up again. Now it's up almost 200%. It's up 195.67%, sitting at $44.41 right now and continuing to climb. Here's the Mega Gardevoir EX. There's two different variants of this. There's one in Primal Clash, and this one right here from Steam Siege. In May of 2024, it was sitting at a one-year low of $9.88, and you can see what it's done over the last month. Very cool looking card, and because of that, really establishing higher price points despite the fact that it stayed fairly consistent in the amount of sales that it's had. Slower growth from May of 2024 up until December, and then very sharp growth after that. Jumped up about 243% and continuing to trend upward. Here's that Mega Houndoom. This one I think from Breakthrough. I can't really see because the picture is so blurry. But May of 2024, it was $13.56. It did start growing a little bit and then dove off a little bit in November and then started shooting up quite a bit again. So it's up about 84% on the year, sitting at $25.36, almost double the price of its $13.56 one-year low. And then we've got the Mega Scizor, this one from Breakpoint. This will be the last one that we look at, up almost 100%. So it's sitting at 98.71% growth on the year. In February of 2024, it was $10.07. Again, very flat the majority of the year, and then November you really start seeing it climb up about 98%. $20 and a penny is where it's currently sitting, but Mega's very interesting to kind of look at as a lot of people start paying attention to what's going on in the Pokemon card market, maybe what's happening in the future of Pokemon. The main thing to remember is that you want to set your own collection goals. You want to set what's important to you. So maybe write down, maybe establish a path, a niche, an area of the Pokemon hobby that you really want to target and focus on that. And if Megas aren't your cup of tea, while you might have content surrounding the potential of Megas returning or Team Rocket returning or something like that, if that's not something that's important to you at the time, don't buy into the FOMO and make poor decisions, because as you can see, we have no idea what Pokemon is going to do, and I think that's very important. The last thing you want to do is make a bad decision when it comes to spending your money. So keep to what is important to you, and then you can't really go wrong in the hobby. So I hope you enjoyed the content. If you did, please hit that subscribe button down below. Like I said, leave a like, leave a comment. It goes a long way for the algorithm. I love you guys. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for everything. We'll be back tomorrow with the stream, Thursday with another video. Until next time, guys. Peace!